Alright guys, so here in front of us we have the primary components of the sliding assembly. This is by far the most complex of the entire tool changer. Getting this step right is going to lay your groundwork for the rest of the install. When these units are shipped, we include this zip tie. It's very important to not remove this zip tie until you're ready to install your pneumatic cylinder assembly. Without this pneumatic cylinder, this sliding car could easily move off the end of your linear rails and you could lose the bearings. So it's just important to remember that don't snip this zip tie until you're ready to install your pneumatic cylinder. To do this step, you'll need a wire snip, a 3/16 inch Allen key, and a 7/16 socket. Now all the screws and fittings are included with this assembly. So your first step will be, once removing your zip tie, slowly slide the assembly throughout the entire travel. This should be very smooth with zero binding. Your next step will be to grab your pneumatic cylinder and slowly slide your pneumatic cylinder throughout the entire travel. Again, make sure there's no binding, sticking, or rough motion. What we'll do once we know both assemblies have smooth movement individually, we'll then go ahead and combine the two parts. So within your sliding assembly, there is a recessed groove that has been machined. That is where the angular mount for your pneumatic cylinder will go. This is very critical that you do this, that you align this appropriately. The cylinder mount here must be snug against the upper edge of this recess. That will align it perfectly perpendicular to your rails. Another helpful hint: do not snug any of these nuts down. Just slightly tighten them so that they're not going to go anywhere, but we don't want them tight just yet. There's a specific order that the screws need to be tightened in to prevent any binding. So prior to snugging these bolts down, go ahead and double check that the assembly slides smooth. If at this stage your assembly isn't sliding smooth, you need to double check and isolate where there's that friction. Ours slides nice and smooth with very, very little effort. So with that being said, step 1, retract the assembly. Step 2, be sure that the mounting bracket is pressed against the top edge of this recess. Again, that helps align that bracket and the pneumatic cylinder with the direction of travel. Snug those nuts down first, then we'll snug these. Now it's very important that when you're snugging these bolts and these bolts, that the nut right there is loose. That nut must be loose when tightening these Allen head screws to prevent binding and or bending of your pneumatic cylinder. Now, the last step is to snug this nut down. All you need is a 7/16 socket, and again, it doesn't have to be ultra tight, just snug it. Now once you've assembled all this, the motion could be nice and smooth. If it's not, something was done incorrectly. Very smooth motion, and you'll notice at the ends of your travel you can feel a slight bit of resistance coming from your pneumatic cylinder. that's the built-in cushion in these pneumatic cylinders. So if you'll look closely, there's a tiny slotted screw in there. That will allow you to control the amount of cushion that's applied in the extend and retract. What's important about that is that will prevent your tool changer from slamming as it travels throughout the range of motion.